Hi, I'm Elvire from the Dimitrov Piano Duo. Now, as some of you might know, we're very busy at the moment recording Dimitar's own music. We've had a lot of requests for scores and for recordings, and we're very busy with trying to make that happen. Now, I've been in the process of mixing and mastering Dimitar's recordings, and up to a few weeks ago, I didn't even know what that meant. Now, I've been watching a lot of videos on YouTube on mixing and mastering and trying to really figure out and learn about this. And it's been very interesting, but it's also been very frustrating because they use a lot of technical jargon. And anytime I'm watching a video, I have to look something up, what they're using, but then they're explaining it using more technical jargon, and I really feel very lost. Now, I realize that actually on the channel, we sometimes also use technical jargon or musical jargon. So I thought that today's video would be about the terms that we use here most commonly on the channel and to try to explain them in a simple way instead of in a way that confuses you even more. So let's hope that I can do that. Let's get started. So one of the things we talk about here on the channel are intervals. Now, an interval is actually really simple. An interval is simply the distance between two notes. You have two different types of intervals. You have a melodic interval, meaning an interval played after each other, like this. So first a C, then an F. Is the distance between the C and the F is called an interval, and it's melodic because you play it after each other. You also have a harmonic interval. That's an interval played at the same time, the C and the F. This is a harmonic interval, the distance between the C and F. So that's the broad name for the distance between two notes. Then you give the intervals specific names. The most common used intervals are the second. Let me actually film this with my phone. A second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh, and an octave. There are more intervals, but these are the one we use most common. So whenever you hear us talking on the channel about a second, we're most likely talking distance, not time. So whenever you hear us talking on the channel about a key, we're not talking about what you use to open doors. We're actually talking the main scale that a piece uses. For example, last week I shot a video, you can check it out here, about a waltz of Chopin in E minor. So when I say a waltz in E minor, that means that it is in the key of E minor. And that means that the scale that that piece uses is the scale of E minor. This is, by the way, the scale of E minor. Now, a scale is just a set of notes arranged in a certain order, and the most common scales are the major scales. The major scales sound happy, and the minor scales, those sound sad. Now, in order to see what key a piece is written in, all we have to do is look at the beginning of the system, because at the beginning of the system, there's always written what we call the key signature. The key signature is simply the amount of flats or sharps. And if you know your music theory, you would look at the key signature and know what key it is written in. So the key signature shows which key a piece is written in. Now, maybe it seems confusing that when I say a piece is written in the key of E minor, that it means that it is written in the scale of E minor, because a scale is just this. How can a piece be written in a scale? Now, I'll show you what was the biggest eye-opener when I learned this stuff. On every note of a scale, you can build a chord. So for example, we always start with the first note of the scale. And if we build a chord on that note, we get an E minor chord. On the second note of the E minor scale, which is the F sharp, we can also build a chord, which is the F sharp diminished chord. Now, don't worry about these complicated sounding names, because those are just simply the names that we give these chords. On the third note of the scale, you can build this chord, which we call it the G major chord. On the fourth note, we can build the A minor chord. On the fifth note, we can build the B minor chord. Sixth note, the C major chord. And on the seventh note, D major. Then we're back at the eighth note of the scale, which is, of course, back to E minor. So now it's a lot more clear what I mean by it is written in the scale of E minor. So you see that in the scale of E minor, there are lots of chords in there. And those chords are the building blocks of the piece. So when we say this valse is written in E minor, it's using these chords from the E minor scale. So that was a big eye-opener, I remember, when I learned this for me. I hope it does the same to you. So now we're going to get to 2 more terms that we use very often. I'm sure that you heard them if you're interested in music, and we do talk about them on the channel here as well. I remember saying it at the end of last week's video. That is the tonic and the dominant. Okay, so the terms tonic and dominant. So if we look again at the scale of E minor, which we've been looking at until now, the first tone of the scale of E minor is the E. This first tone we call the tonic. Now where it becomes a bit confusing is that the chord that we build on this first tone, which is the E minor chord, we also call this the tonic. So the tonic can either be the first note of a scale, or it can be the chord built on this first note. So the first chord of the scale. Both of these are called the tonic. A little bit confusing, but very often I would say that when the tonic is used, very often we're actually talking about the chord. Not always, but often. Now, the 5th note in the scale, which is in the case of the E minor scale, the B. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? The 5th note. And you start, by the way, counting the E as 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th note of the scale, of any major or minor scale, is called the dominant. Again, just like with the tonic, also the chord built on this 5th note, so the B minor chord, is also called the dominant. So the dominant is a name for both the 5th note in the scale and the chord built on that note, so the 5th chord in the scale. Just as with the tonic, very often when we're talking about the dominant, very often we're talking about the chord. Now, in any type of music, both the tonic and the dominant are very important. If you analyze any type of music, I would guarantee that you find a lot of tonics and dominant chords. If you look at the ending also of a lot of pieces, you would almost always find that they end with tonic, dominant, tonic. For example, any piece written in C major would probably end something like C, G, C, which is tonic, dominant, tonic. Why? Because C is the first note of the scale of C. The chord built on that first note is the C major chord. G is the 5th note in that scale, in the 5th note of the scale C major, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's G. The chord built on that note is G major, right? So most pieces written in C major would end something like C, G, C, which is tonic, dominant, tonic. So I really did my best to try to keep it as simple for you with as few technical jargon as possible. If you want more videos like this, or if there's any technical terms tripping you up, I will do my best. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know if it was useful to you in the comments. If you want to be notified, by the way, when we are publishing Dimitar's music, both the recordings and the scores, the best thing to do is either to subscribe, to follow us on social media, on Instagram or Facebook, or to sign in for the newsletter on our website. I will try to remember to link our website in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. Please keep in touch. Let us know what we can help you with, and we will see you next week again.